Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast, hosted by me, Anthony. As you guys know, got a very good show for you guys today. Have a lot to get into. See some of you guys in the chat. We got Muhammad, 1:30 in the morning, and this guy is watching me talk about the Detroit Pistons from Italy. Shout out to Muhammad, by the way. We got David Sloan in the chat. What up? Um, I want to get into something that I think a lot of you guys probably are pretty interested in, and that's Kate Cunningham. Now, obviously, we saw the reports and we saw the news later this week. I should say earlier in the week that Kate Cunningham um, isn't going to be in the starting lineup, and we don't really know for how long. Now, obviously, we did get a report from Johnny Kane of Bally Sports Detroit. For you guys that know who that is, I'm going to put it on the screen for you guys real quick and read off the tweet that he had posted later in the week. It says, an MRI performed yesterday on Pistons guard Kate Cunningham confirmed of left knee strain. Cunningham will be reevaluated in 7 to 10 days, and an update will be provided as appropriate. This was kind of a blow for the Pistons. Obviously, Cade playing high 30s, almost, it seems like, 30, 35 minutes each and every night for the Detroit Pistons. And I think this was going to happen eventually. He's playing a really high usage. You look at his usage rate, it's in the high 30s. And deservedly so. You kind of look at the roster makeup. It makes sense for him to have such a high usage rate. It makes sense for him to, play 30 minutes a night. Um, it's tough. It is really tough. I did look at the injury report. This comes from CBS Sports, so I do want to put this on the screen for you guys that are watching live. So it kind of gives an update of when we could expect Cade Cunningham back. Now, this was updated a few days ago on Tuesday the 9th. So CBS Sports said they expect Cade Cunningham to be at least out until January 17th, which is later. This week he could possibly come back. Fingers crossed. Hopefully it's not too serious of an injury. It sounded like from what the beat reporters were saying that it's not too serious of an injury. Then you also have I'll just go on and read it. You have Monte Morris, who has a quadricep injury. He could possibly return next week as early as January 24th. And then for some reason Bojan got hurt. He's expected to be back next week. It's just tough though, man. It really is to, have your franchise player get injured like that. But I did want to update you guys on that. Alan Hart says the dude stays injured every year. Yeah, I mean it's tough, Alan. It really is. It really is. We appreciate you watching live on Facebook, by the way. But yeah, it's hard when you're playing, high 30s every night and you don't really have a, go-to help. I mean, if you think about it, Bojan Bogdanovic on the Detroit Pistons right now is the second option for the Detroit Pistons. A 34-year-old Bojan Bogdanovic is the Detroit Pistons' second leading scorer at almost at 20 a game. So we got to get Cade Cunningham some help, but did want to give you guys a little update on Cade Cunningham. We'll possibly see him as early as next week. So that is something that I think is, at least positive. I wanted to start the podcast out a little bit positive. We do have another, update, and this comes from Monte Morris, right? So Monte Morris said he's close to making his return. Now, I don't know if a lot of you guys follow Monte Morris on social media, but he did post this little 15-second video. I'm going to put it on the screen for you guys that are watching live right now. And, basically he's just working out right now. And if you see the caption, he says, see y'all this month. So I think Monte Morris is getting really close to return. Now, I don't really know what the interest level is from you guys as fans. I really don't. I don't know as Pistons fans, if you guys, not to say that Monte Morris isn't a good player. I think he is a very good vet. He's a vet that I think this team could have probably used for the last 2 months because he's been injured. but I don't really know where the excitement level is right now as Pistons fans. Like personally, like in the chat, most of you guys tell me each and every week, the season's over. I don't really know what Monte Morris could help this team do. We have so many guards. We need wings. I just don't know. But did want to give you guys a little update on that on Monte Morris. He should be back possibly next week. We'll see if the Detroit Pistons decide to actually clear him this time. Because for whatever reason, they didn't clear Monte Morris, which I never understood why they never did. But hey, man, maybe there's another objective with Monte Morris. Did want to get into outside of the injury stuff. I think this is probably going to be the best part of the podcast, in my opinion. And this has to do with, a lot of the trades around here, a lot of the trades. And I was listening to Hoops Hype podcast with Michael Scotto, and he basically said, I believe if the Detroit Pistons were to add a Pascal Siakam, this would be like adding Blake Griffin 2.0. Now, when I heard this, I was like, that's a really interesting take from a national media member. It's a very interesting take. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to try to give a positive take and then a negative take with this quote from him. And I'll start positive first. If you look at Blake Griffin's time here in Detroit, obviously, he helped the Pistons get to the playoffs when he was healthy, relatively healthy. The Pistons were a 6 seed at one point. Obviously, he gets injured. They fall all the way to the 8 seed. And we all know what happens. The Pistons versus Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks, and they get swept. But Detroit Blake Griffin was a very good player. I think he was NBA third team that season. He had career highs across the board. So I think positively, if saying, adding a Pascal Siakam would be like Blake Griffin 2.0, I think from that aspect, I think a lot of fans would probably take that right now, just given the state of the Detroit Pistons, given the state of how bad of a basketball team this is and how bad of a team this is to watch each and every night. I think this team just lacks veteran leadership. It lacks vets that can hold these young guys accountable. And I don't know if Pascal Siakam has those type of leadership qualities, but saying it would be a Blake Griffin 2.0, I think from a positive standpoint, that's what you can take away from it. Now, if you were to take away the negative standpoint of saying, like, adding Pascal would be Blake Griffin 2.0, this is where I think a lot of fans, a lot of you guys in the comment section watching right now would probably agree with me. Now, Pascal Siakam, we've seen him in the trade rumors, for the last two or 3 weeks. This guy wants to get paid. There's no denying that. The Kings were ready to, give them a first round pick, Davion Mitchell, Kevin Huerter, and Harrison Barnes. And, Pascal Siakam was like, are you going to give me a max deal? If not, no, I'm not interested. I don't think it's a good long-term fit for me on the Kings. And if you look at it, Pascal could possibly get paid $200 million this summer, you guys. Are you comfortable giving him 4 for 200, 5 for 235? That's the conversation you have to have. And I think Pascal Siakam, from a standpoint of getting a veteran, I think he checks that box. I think he's going to be the best forward that's available this summer. I think he does help a lot with the Pistons in the front court. But you have to ask yourself, is Pascal Siakam worth 4 for 200 million? Is he worth 5 for 235 million? So if you take these comments, adding Pascal would be another Blake Griffin. Yeah, I could see that from a negative standpoint of saying, like, contract wise, it would kind of put the Pistons in a sticky situation in terms of cap flexibility, right? Are you willing to just eat that and say, hey, we're going to just, max out Pascal and that's going to be our big splash this summer? I don't know. I think some fans would be happy with that if they did land a big name free agent. I think other fans would kind of be disappointed if you paid a guy in Pascal Siakam over $200 million over a 4-year period. And I think it's just you could take this two ways. I think positive wise, I think adding a guy like that would make a whole lot of sense for the Pistons to actually do something, actually add a guy that's a plus asset, not a negative asset. But in the same standpoint, you could use your cap space wisely and kind of get, mid-tier guys, try to, fill out the roster, fill out the bench, get more pieces that maybe aren't household names, but at least they can contribute at a somewhat high level. But that's the thing, man. Like I want to react to a couple of your comments in the comment section. If you are watching live on YouTube and Facebook right now, we're gonna go to a couple with this. This comes from Ryan Boseman. Shout out to Ryan. Can we get our big fish and still get Miles Bridges? Uh yes, I think you could. I just don't really know what a Miles Bridges number would be. And I'm just going to talk about Miles Bridges from a basketball standpoint. I'm not going to get on into any off the court stuff because I think that's just irresponsible because I don't know the situation and I think it would be irresponsible for me to even talk about it. I think from a basketball standpoint, it makes sense. Could you get him for a vet's minimum? I don't know. Could you get him anywhere from like 5 to 8? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what GMs around the league think of Miles Bridges. I know he was on the Detroit Pistons quote unquote wish list that Shams Charania did tweet out earlier this week. Or not this week, I should say. I think it was over 2 weeks ago now. But he could be a guy that maybe the Pistons want to grab and they don't want to spend a whole lot of money in. His off the court stuff could be to their advantage because they're not going to give a guy like $100 million with the baggage. But I think to your question, Ryan, yeah, you could get a big fish in Miles Bridges if you feel that you can trust Miles Bridges. I feel like you're just going to really have to keep an eye on him to make sure that he's 100% locked in. And no distractions on the court because I think that's the last thing the Detroit Pistons need right now is distractions. But you can't argue the type of basketball player Miles Bridges is. This comes from Mr. McKinney. I don't trust Weaver to make an impactful trade. Mr. McKinney, what I would say is I think you're right. We haven't really seen it. We haven't seen him make an impactful trade since the Jeremy Grant trade. When it was a sign-in trade to the Denver Nuggets. That was the last impactful trade we've seen, and that was Weaver's first year in 2020 during the COVID year. We really haven't not seen it in an impactful trade. I mean, you could say Svi Mykhailiuk for Hamidou Diallo from a few years ago. That was somewhat impactful, but Hamidou was in the G League this year. He recently just got signed, I believe, by the Wizards, gave him a 10-day or something like that. But like, if you look at his trades, I mean, they're not the best. I mean, the Sadiq Bey for James Wiseman trade, I think, is the one trade that still has a bad taste in a lot of Detroit Pistons fans' mouth. I know I'm still I don't understand it. Obviously, I know Sadiq wanted to get paid, but at least he was a rotational player. But to your point, yeah, it's hard to trust him when he hasn't really had a good trade in recent memory. So we got Tyler says go after Levine. I mean that's an option too. That's an option too. You don't really know what his trade market is. Woj has said multiple times there is no trade market for Zach LaVine. You have to look at the contract too. I think he's owed 180 million left on his deal, which isn't as bad as if you were to go to try to max out Pascal for like over 200. But does this team need another guard? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you think that the Detroit Pistons need another guard that doesn't play defense? Zach LaVine could get you 30, but he might give up 40. That's just what you have to ask yourself. I think the talent's there. And if you can get him for your expiring contracts, why the hell not? Why wouldn't you do that? It gets Cade another primary ball handler. It gets Cade another guy that can, get his own shot. I just think from a contract standpoint, it's kind of you put yourself in a similar situation when Blake was here, when Blake had a bigger contract and you couldn't really make those moves that you wanted to make because your cap space was all taken up. But if you feel like Zach LaVine is that type of player where he really moves the needle and he kind of gets you out of what you're in currently, then go for it. I personally don't think so. I think he's a good player, but I think he's probably going to end up in LA. That would just be my personal preference for a LaVine. Jeremy Banks, no way I'd give Siakam that kind of money. Yeah, like straight up, he's going to demand that type of money. I would not be surprised if you see Pascal sign for a $200 million contract this summer. I just would not be surprised. And I think that's what he's going to demand, and he should. He's a good player. He wants to get that one bag before he does retire. And I think there will be a team out there to try to give him that $200 million. I know the Pistons are interested, but it'll be really interesting to see how interested they actually are. This comes from Chili. Don't want to swap out guard for guard. If we're giving up Ivy, we need a strong starting four. 100% agree. In terms of like swapping out guard for guard, we have so many. I think we have 6 or 7 guards on this roster. But I do agree with your standpoint of we do need a starting four. Nothing against Isaiah Stewart, but I think as a four, he's more valuable to me off the bench. I think off the bench, Isaiah Stewart adds more. Comes from 7 Mile, but I haven't seen him in a minute. He's better than Grant, and that's what we would have to pay him. Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, Grant just signed for what, $160 million? I mean, that's a guy that I think he's probably available in the trading block right now. Like, would you rather have Jeremy Grant or Pascal Siakam? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. And I think a lot of fans, I don't know, actually. That's interesting. Would you rather have Pascal Siakam or Jeremy Grant? I think that's a debate. That is definitely a debate. I personally would probably say I'd like Pascal more, but I think Jeremy Grant would be cheaper in the long term given his contract. Yeah, I don't want to trade for Siakam. Yeah, me either. Me either. I think free agency would be the smarter move. I think if you were to trade for Pascal, you're giving up one of your core guys. You're giving up like an Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren to get him. And I don't think that's worth it from the Pistons standpoint. I think just waiting free agency, throw him something. If he doesn't sign, I mean, hey, man, go about your business. I think there are some players that you can get that can contribute. You don't need like to spend all your cap space on a Siakam when you could get, maybe mid-tier guys to get you a good like 10 to 12 points off the bench. Or maybe you can get Tobias Harris to sign for maybe a little bit less. I don't know. I know Tobias is a little bit older, but there's definitely connections there. I think we can offer more money to Anunoby than the Knicks. I think they will try to sign him for less than what he wants. So the Anunoby thing's interesting. So Anunoby basically said he would sign for less with the Knicks, but I don't really think there's a chance the Pistons can pry him away from the New York Knicks. I think the Knicks have an understanding that he will resign with them, and he's going to do it for less than maybe a team like the Pistons can offer. I still think it's going to be in the $25 to $30 million range, Mathis. But I don't know if the Pistons will try to get themselves in a bidding war with the Knicks for OG Anunoby. Personally, he was on my wish list. I thought that would be a perfect forward for this team to pair with the starting lineup. But, the Knicks got him for, RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly, which is a really good trade for both sides, in my opinion. I think it was just like one of the most I wouldn't say it was a one-sided trade, but I think it was a pretty fair trade for both sides. Both Anunoby and RJ Barrett have been doing really well for their respective new teams. We'll get to a couple more questions, and then we're going to get into the next topic, you guys. This comes from Michael Powell. Shout out to Michael. Siakam or LaVine would be only short-term matters. I don't think either could see themselves here long-term basis, not where this team currently is. Michael, I'm glad you said that. But for LaVine, I could see it, where you're coming from. LaVine is in the, getting into his prime. He probably wants to play for a contender. That's why I think LA is just going to land Levine like at the last minute of the trading deadline. I think the Bulls will just be so desperate to get off his contract they really don't care. I think Levine wants to play for a contender. Now with Siakam, I think Siakam just wants to get paid. Um, Now whether that's with the Pistons, whether that's I don't even know if the Magic would want him. I know the Magic are going to have a crap load of cap space this year. I don't really know if it would make much sense to have a Paulo Banchero and a Pascal Siakam, but that's something you have to keep an eye on. I think he's going to get paid, but in the same breath, you're right. They probably don't want to be here in the long term because this might take another 2 to 3 years for us to like really get ourselves out of the gutter and try to compete for a playoff spot. But we'll see what happens. We'll do one more, and then we're going to get into the next topic. So I'll do one more comment, you guys. You know what? Truth over emotions. I've talked about this so many times. I'm waiting for Phoenix to implode. I'm waiting for the Phoenix Suns to implode because I don't think this big three is going to work. I expect Phoenix to fail. And I think when they do fail, they're going to have a lot of problems with their cap space. And I think that's where the Pistons should sniff around and see what it would take to get a Devin Booker. And that's just kind of my take. That's just kind of my take of trying to get Booker. But that would be a pipe dream at this point. So we are going to get into the next topic of the show, you guys. But like I said, we will answer more questions after this next topic. And this topic is Dejounte Murray. And this is, the thumbnail. Pistons trade for Dejounte Murray. Now, obviously, the report came out this week from Jake Fisher. The Lakers, Knicks, Sixers, Heat, and Pistons are 5 suitors expected to engage Atlanta about Dejounte Murray. Now, Atlanta, to me, I think they're just having a fire sale right now. Everything you read about the Hawks, they like Jalen Johnson a lot, who is their forward, who, man, he would be such a great fit on the Pistons, but that's another topic for another day. And Trae Young. I think everyone in Atlanta is available. And it's funny because if you guys remember, the Hawks gave up 2 first-round picks to get Dejounte Murray. Now, them putting him on the trade market, I don't think they'll get 2 firsts for Dejounte Murray right now. And I think fit-wise, it's a unique situation for the Pistons. It is. But I don't know I don't really know what the asking price for him is currently. And I think if you look at our assets are our young players. Now, would trading Jaden Ivey for Dejounte Murray really move the needle? I don't know. I don't know what the fit would be like with the Trae Young and a Jaden Ivey. It's interesting. When I look at this list, when I look at the 5 suitors interested, I think the Knicks make the most sense, and even the Heat to an extent. The Pistons have so many guards. I think he would help out the defense. He's a playmaker. He can score a little bit. But this team does not need another guard, in my opinion. We don't need him. There's no need for Dejounte Murray right now. Now, if this was a wing, like a Mikal Bridges, for example, like if Mikal Bridges was on the market right now, I would say go for it. You need more wings. You need, some lockdown small forwards. But this is another guard. I think there's a reason why Atlanta is having a quote unquote fire sale and retooling is because they paid a bunch of people. They made trades they shouldn't have made, and they're just not where they should be. Atlanta should be at least a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference with Trae Young as their point guard. And they're just trying to retool. They're trying to surround Trae Young with better pieces. And I don't really think what the Pistons have to offer would entice Atlanta to make a deal. I'm not trading Jaden Ivey for Dejounte Murray right now. I'm not trading Asar Thompson for Dejounte Murray. I'm not trading Jalen Durham for Dejounte Murray. And I think a lot of you guys wouldn't either. I think Dejounte Murray, I think for the Miami Heat, they need a new point guard. Kyle Lowry's like what, 50? Like they need a new point guard. I don't think the Pistons need any more guards. And I don't see it. I really don't. I don't see a point of trading for another guard. It makes no sense. You have seven. Let's add, an eighth. This team needs small forwards desperately. They really do. But I do want to get some of your comments about this topic, you guys. This is going to be a recurring thing on this podcast going forward because I do want to read what you guys are saying. Let's see. Murray plus Sadiq for Sass and Burks and Boyan. Like that's kind of like a trade like that. I know Sadiq wants to get paid, so it's just a rental for Sadiq. Murray's under contract for a few more years. You just drafted Marcus Sasser, and you're barely using him. You have to use him now because Kate's hurt, which is really unfortunate. Burks is on an expiring deal this year, so that's $10 million off the books, and then Boyan. Yeah, like a trade like that, it doesn't really get me too excited because it's a rental for Sadiq, and that's it. And you get Murray. Like I'm not really like in love with that trade. Tyler Holmes says rather have AJ Griffin than Murray from Atlanta. Yeah, AJ Griffin's nice. He is. He's a wing that the Pistons could use. I know Detroit and Atlanta during the draft they had talks about swapping picks for I think it was DeAndre Hunter. I don't know if there's still interest from the Pistons side for DeAndre Hunter. I don't know. He's on a somewhat, I think, team-friendly deal. Maybe that's a deal that they could, work out, but I don't really know what they would want from DeAndre Hunter. We don't need him. Yeah, exactly. I don't think we need him either. I don't think we need another guard. Pistons can create a super team with non-superstars, but depth. They could have the deepest bench. Maurice, man, I love you for this comment. Exactly. You don't really need a super team. And I think super teams are actually going away in the NBA. I don't think you're going to see these three teams, 3-star teams like they have in Phoenix. I think what you're going to start seeing in the NBA are these duos. Because I think duos are the new wave of the NBA. I think the NBA with the new CBA, they're going to penalize teams for, having guys on max deals, having guys having quote unquote big threes. Phoenix is going to have to make trades. They're going to have to blow it up. You look at teams like Minnesota, like Karl Anthony Towns is on a $50 million contract. He's in year one of his super max. If Minnesota gets bounced out the first round, I guarantee you they're going to be making some trades. Maybe they make Cat available. Maybe they make Rudy Gobert available, whatever. And they just pay Jaden McDaniels. What you're going to see is a lot of these teams that have really high salary cap books. A lot of these guys are going to be available. Like the Golden State Warriors, for example, they just made everyone except Steph Curry available for trade. So, this new CBA is really going to, hard cap a lot of these teams that are trying to make quote unquote super teams. And I'm so happy. I hated the super team era. I hated the 3 stars on one team era. I thought it was just, there was maybe 2 or 3 teams that you knew that was going to make the finals each and every year. And now you really don't know. It's more of I think it's better for the league. And I know that was a little rant, but straight up. This comes from another one from Ruiz. Why are all trade talks about as teams, team to team, instead of 3-way trades? Is that not legal? I think it's more of a vague thing. You could be interested in a player, but maybe possibly they've had 3 team trade talks, and I think it's kind of harder for guys like Woj, Shams, Jake Fisher to try to get it out of these agents, because at the end of the day, when you guys see news, it's coming from sports agents. It's coming from guys that work for Clutch Sports. It's coming from guys that work for Rock Nation. It's coming from sports agents at the end of the day, and that's what they leak. They leak hey, Jaden Ivey isn't on the trade block. Stop asking. That's all it is. It comes from agents, or they call the team representative, say like, "Hey, are you guys making moves?" And the team representative will tell them like, "Nope, we're keeping this guy." So I mean that's where they get their news from. But to your question, I think it's they have to be a little bit vague about it, be a little bit professional about it, and not try to leak too much information. Um, the only issue trading for Murray is you probably have to trade Ivy, and that's not ideal. No, it's not. It's not game nuts. I'm glad you said that. Um, and we're gonna get into the Monty Williams organizational meeting towards the end of the podcast because that was hilarious last night. I was dying at that. I think that Ivy to me, he's a big part of your future. Whether Pistons fans want to agree with it or not, I think Jaden Ivey long term could be your shooting guard of the future or point guard because we saw the ball in his hands last night. But we'll see, man. I think it's too soon to sell off Jaden Ivey. He's in year 2, and he's a good player. He's a good player at the end of the day. I think some fans are ready to write him off. They're ready to punt him to the moon, quote unquote. But to me, I've always been a really big fan of Jaden Ivey. I think there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of untapped potential. If he just slows down and let the game slow down for him, and he's going to be dangerous to me. He really is. I'm going to get to a couple more comments with this Murray topic. Let's see. This is a good one. Do you think Ivy, the point guard, do you think they make Ivy the point guard and use Case as shooting guard? I think it makes most sense. Okay, we'll get into this question and then we'll get into the next topic of the podcast. This comes from Josh. Josh, I think you could have these conversations because Cade Cunningham, to me, you can either play him at point guard or shooting guard. I think Cade can play either. But Ivy has said multiple times that, I'm more of a off guard. I don't feel comfortable with the ball in my hands, but I can do it. I think last night, what you saw down the stretch, last 3 minutes of that game, the pressure got to Ivy a little bit. Obviously, he missed those 2 free throws, made a couple of turnovers, but he's capable of playing point guard. I would rather see Ivy play off ball. I'd rather see him play the 2, but I don't need him standing in the corner. I think what I need from Ivy is I need him to be a movement shooter. I need him to be running off screens like he was at Purdue. I think that's what I want to like the Purdue Jaden Ivey. I want to see in this Pistons offense. We haven't really seen it so far. If you watch his tape at Purdue, he was a movement shooter, but he could also slash and attack the basket. And I think that's what makes him such a unique player. So I think the Pistons coaching staff has to sit down, watch some film, and see how they can, run some sets for Jaden Ivey, curling or coming off ball. But I do want to get into the next topic of this podcast, you guys. And this is a topic I think not a lot of people saw, and it has to do with Killian Hayes. Now, I don't hate just to start this topic off. I don't hate Killian Hayes. I think a lot of people think I hate him. I don't. I think Killian Hayes to me is more valuable in 20 minutes versus 30. But Killian Hayes last week talked with a reporter. This was a French publication saying that he wants to stay in Detroit long term. And I'm going to read you the quote from this article, you guys, so you guys can get the full context of where this is coming from. So this is a question they asked them. They said, "This is also your last year of contract. Do you see yourself in Detroit long term, or are you open to a new challenge with perhaps more responsibilities?" Killian said, "For now, I'm in Detroit, and we're going to do everything to finish the season strong, and then we'll have discussions this summer. I've spent my entire NBA career in Detroit, and it would be a pleasure to be able to stay. After that, it's just not me who decides, but Detroit is my home. It's been my home for 4 years, and I hope to stay." Now, obviously, like when you read stuff like this, Obviously, Killian likes Detroit. He wants to stay. We had James Edwards on last week. James Edwards reported on live on the podcast that the Pistons offered Killian Hayes a contract extension, and they were really far off on a number. They were really far off on a new deal, right? I don't really know what Killian's looking for. I don't know if he's looking for, maybe 8 to 12 million. I think the Pistons front office would probably be more comfortable, like around that 2 to 6 range for him. And I think long term, what he's going to be in the NBA is a backup point guard, and those are needed. I said at the top of this topic, he's more valuable to me personally in a good 15 to 20 minutes. Once you start playing him in the high 30s, he starts making mistakes. I think as a backup point guard, to me, I think that's his niche in the NBA. Now, whether or not you guys want to see him in Detroit, I'll let you guys, discuss that. But I wouldn't hate if they signed him to a budget-friendly deal as a backup point guard, because you really don't know what Monte Morris is going to do, even though he is expected to come back later this month. You don't know if Monte Morris could be your new long-term backup point guard. He's in the last year of a deal, you have to remember. Do the Pistons like Monte Morris more than Killian? Do they want to keep Monte Morris on this team as the backup point guard versus Killian? We're going to have to wait and see. But I think Killian has had flashes this year, but as of late, he has really struggled. And that's just kind of like been his career here in Detroit. He's a good defender, good passer. Offensively, it's still a work in progress. And he might never have an offensive game in the NBA. He might just be a, pure pass first point guard. And there are point guards in this league that have made a living out of that. I mean, you look at guys like Ricky Rubio. Ricky Rubio could hit a shot, once in a while. He started to figure it out later throughout his career. Killian's only 22, you have to remember. But could Killian Hayes have that Ricky Rubio type of career? I don't know. We'd have to wait and see. We really would have to wait and see. But I think Killian Hayes is always going to have a lot of hate towards fans because Tyrese Halliburton was right there. And I think a lot of fans would tell you they'd rather have Tyrese. If they had to go back, rather have Tyrese than Killian all day. And I think a lot of fans, when they have that revisionist history, they'll tell you straight up. I was pretty high on Killian coming out of the draft. If he wants to stay, cool. But like I said, there's a certain price where if he's asking for, 10 million, you're going to have to say goodbye, because I just don't think he's worth 10 million a year on this basketball team right now. But I do want to get to some comments from you guys. This comes from Isaac. He cannot shoot. He needs to take a whole summer and work on his shooting. Yeah, he does. And Isaac, I'll go one further. I think he needs a new trainer. I think he needs to get with some legitimate NBA trainers. No shot at this trainer. I think he needs to work with the guard whisperer. He's worked with a lot of NBA guys. He's worked with former Pistons like Saban Lee, fixing his jump shot. He's worked with guys like Evan Mobley. There's a lot of talented NBA trainers out there that could really spend time with Killian and, try to develop his jump shot. But I don't know. I do want to get to a couple more comments about this topic about Killian wanting to stay in Detroit. I wanted Cole Anthony. Fair. Cole Anthony was, to me, I think in that draft, looking back on it, I thought he was the best offensive point guard available. Like, if you just wanted a bucket, I thought Cole Anthony, to me, made the most sense. SJ, in my opinion, use more Sasser and re-sign for cheap deal for Morris than extend Killian. Yeah, that's another avenue, SJ. Like, you drafted Sasser, you're not really playing him. We really haven't seen Sasser play too much. Obviously, Cade got hurt and he's playing more now, but you're not really seeing too much out of Sasser lately. But Red Baron, middling backup who's decent defender with the mid range. I would love that cannot talk today. I would love for the Pistons to have an incredible 3-guard lineup. Both times we won, we had three solid guards. Yeah, that's another thing with Killian is if he can develop a mid range, cool. Like I said, I think his niche in the NBA is just going to be a backup. I don't think he would be a starter anywhere else in the league. I think he would be just a backup point guard, and that's fine. That is fine. Um, yeah, let's see. Do one more question, then we'll get into more topics. For this show, 7 Mile B's got to go. I feel it. I feel it. It's I don't know, man. It's been 4 years. To your guys' point, there hasn't really been a whole lot of quote unquote development. And hey, man, there's a lot of players from that draft that the Pistons could have had. Like you could have had Tyrese Maxey, who's turning into a star in Philly. There's a lot of guards in that draft that the Pistons they had 3 draft picks, and I mean it's so crazy to think about. Isaiah Stewart is probably going to be the only draft pick from that 2020 class still on the team, possibly next year. That's crazy to think about. But I did want to get into this last topic, you guys. And it's the Detroit Pistons had a big organizational meeting. Now, for you guys that don't know, after the game, after the Houston Rockets game, Monty Williams said in his press conference that the Pistons had an organizational meeting with him about having Jaden Ivey have the ball in his hands a lot more. And I found this really interesting to not only mention it, but mention it after a loss to the Houston Rockets. Because Jaden Ivey did have the ball in his hands a lot more. And it's kind of funny that this organization had to sit down a coach to tell him, hey, you need to have this player that we just drafted last year have the ball in his hands, or 2 years ago, I should say. I'm still getting adjusted to 2024. You drafted him in 2022. That's just a red flag. That's such a red flag if you're looking at the optics of the Detroit Pistons right now. Like we've all had debates and theories, and Monty doesn't like Jaden Ivey. Monty's against Jaden Ivey. Monty's playing favoritism. It's tough love. Like you're reading too much into it. I think when you look at it now, it took him almost a half a season to admit that Jaden Ivey thrives with the ball in his hands. And we saw it all last year. Jaden Ivey is the lead guard. Granted, Kate Cunningham was out for a majority of the season. But Jaden Ivey with the ball in his hands did some pretty good things. Now, obviously, the Pistons only won 17 games last year, but they have 3 wins right now, you guys. This to me was just hilarious. It was really hilarious that um one, a coach even admitted they had a meeting, and two, it took them damn near 35 games to admit that a guy that he's been benching because he makes mistakes and turnovers at costly times admitted that, yeah, he's pretty good with the ball in his hands. I should have tried it earlier than, put him in the corner, give him the Sekou Demboya treatment, the Stanley Johnson treatment, stand in the corner for 3. I, I could go so many different directions with this. Like, I think from a hiring standpoint, a lot of you guys in the comment section were basically saying, like, hey, like, I don't think Monty Williams was the right coach for the Detroit Pistons. And, at the time, like, when you guys were saying that, 3, 4 months ago, or I should say 3 months ago or 2 months ago, I was like, it's still early in the season, but the more I watch these games, the more I watch these rotations, I honestly think Monty just wanted to take a year off. I don't think he was ready to come back in the coaching fray. And obviously we've read all the reports of, Weaver wanted this guy, Gores wanted Monty, whatever. Like I'm not gonna get into that, but I think eventually you have to trust the people that run your organization to hire the guys that they wanted. Now, do the Pistons have 3 wins if Kevin Ollie is coach here? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know that a young up and coming coach would probably make changes after a 10-game losing streak. Monty's old school and he's stubborn to a fault, and no coach is perfect. But to the fact that it took you 30, 35 games to admit that Jaden Ivey is a pretty good ball handler. Like, what? Man, like I don't, so many cooks in the kitchen for me, honestly, man. Like when Tom Gore said that I'm talking to Monty Williams about rotations. I'm sorry, under no circumstance should an owner talk to you about starting lineups and rotations. It's gotten that bad that Tom Gores has to tell Monty, I think you should play this guy. It's just bad, man. It's a red flag if you are a Piston fan. It's a red flag as an organization that your owner has to step in and tell you, I think you should play this guy instead of this guy. But I wanted to talk about this. I thought it was funny. I can only laugh at the stupidity right now. I only can. Because if I don't laugh, I'll scream. Like, it's just anything that could go wrong this season has. It's just been a huge mess, you guys. But I do want to get to some of your comments in the comment section about this organizational meeting, quote unquote. Let's see what we got so far. If you guys are watching live on YouTube and Facebook, greatly appreciate it. Really do. 7 Mile B says Poison Ivy is my guy. Needs to bulk up, back up his confidence. Yeah, 100%. Actually, his confidence to me, I felt like in the beginning of the season was pretty high, but as the season went on, it seemed like he was losing a little bit. But giving him the ball should reassure his confidence to get him back out there. Josh Shee, Gores is responsible for the coaching situation and denying Weaver his guy. Yeah, 100%, Josh. 100%. If Weaver thought that, Kevin Ollie was a better fit, why not roll the dice? I don't get it. Like, obviously, like I had my, questions of hiring a guy that's never coached at the NBA level, but you see, he was a development coach for the Overtime Elite. He was coaching Asar Thompson and Amin Thompson and other Overtime Elite prospects. I think that's what you needed too. You needed a development coach. Monty isn't really known for his development. He's more of a vets coach. He's the type of coach that you hire to try to get to the playoffs. You hired to try to get out of the first round. I don't think the Pistons were there yet. I think they got a little bit too ahead of themselves. I'm glad the front office pretty much got off their ass and called them out. Yeah, something had to be done organic. It really did. Drafting a guy that you drafted in 2022 and he's getting basically all the blame. He's getting singled out, it seemed like, this year. I think something had to be done. And I'm glad whoever it was told him, like, hey, you need to, have the ball in his hands more. He needs to, play more than 15, 20 minutes a night. Like, something had to be done. Marie said either Monty isn't mentally ready to coach or not fit to coach young guys. I think it's a mixture of both, Maurice. I do. I think I said earlier, I don't think he mentally was ready to coach. Obviously, with his family and stuff going on with his wife. I'm not going to get into personal matters, but he said he wanted to take a year off and just kind of reevaluate where he was at. And to say he's not fit for the young guys, I think it's a factual statement, just based off the fact that you can look at the Phoenix Suns team before Chris Paul got there. Phoenix wasn't winning a whole lot of basketball games. They didn't really turn it around until CP3 got there. And I mean, you can look at the records, you can look at the offensive ratings, the defensive ratings. Like as soon as Chris Paul got there, uh, the Suns turned it around. I'm gonna get to a couple more questions. This comes from Devon. I don't think Cade and Ivy are a bad fit. Monty is just not the coach we needed at the time. Yeah, 100%. 100%. We talked about that a little bit earlier. I think he's a good coach. It's just you need a guy, you needed a guy that was more of a patient, younger guy, could relate to the guys a little bit more, also could develop them, coach the bad habits out of them. I don't really know if Monty is the coach to do that. And that's perfectly okay. I mean, you have veteran coaches in the NBA and you have like development coaches. Like I always look at Kenny Atkinson, who's an assistant right now in Golden State. I think what he did with the Brooklyn Nets, like they developed, they got better each and every year, and he got them to the playoffs. Obviously, they didn't win a championship, but obviously the players got better under him. And I think that's what a lot of Pistons fans wanted was a guy that could develop these players and help them get better. So there are a couple more questions, then we can get into Q&A for you guys. Monty is clearing doing his job and collecting paychecks. He's not done anything terribly wrong. He's just been mediocre by the books on a team that needs a breakout coach. Yeah, I wouldn't say he's done a bad job. I thought in the beginning of the season his rotations and adjustments were pretty good, Nathan. But I think at times during, maybe like the last 2 weeks, at times he's just riding these guys really high minutes and he's not playing like certain guys. Like I want to use Kevin Knox as an example, right? We saw Isaiah Livers in the starting lineup when Kevin Knox was playing really well. And Kevin Knox didn't get that much playing time. And I couldn't understand why, because it seems like every time Kevin Knox plays, he contributes and he does well. And he's usually scoring at least 10 points a night. It's just stuff like that where I look at it and I'm like, doesn't make sense. But we are going to get into the Q&A portion of this podcast, you guys. So if you do have any questions you guys want to talk about, whether it's, players around the league, trades, whatever, put them down in the comment section and we can get into it. We've only been on for like 53 minutes. We could do it for like around another 20, 30 minutes. And then we could wrap this podcast up. Let's see if you guys have any questions. Comes from Tristan. I've lost complete faith in the entire front office. And I think as fans, you should lose complete faith. And I know this isn't really a question, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit. I think when you get sold on the fact that we were going to, be aggressive and, the end goal for the Pistons was actually to compete this year. Last week when I was talking to James, he said that Cade getting hurt kind of slowed that process down because they didn't want to commit to a big name free agent because they didn't know the type of player Cade Cunningham could possibly be. But what I will say, Tristan, is I think what's probably going to happen this summer is you're going to see the Detroit Pistons have a similar offseason as the Houston Rockets did this past summer. I think the Pistons are going to be in a lot of news, a lot of rumors for a lot of the top free agents this summer. They're going to have the money to do it. They have a lot of guys coming off their books, like Alec Burks, James Wiseman, Monte Morris, Joe Harris. They're going to have cap space to spend. It depends what they do this deadline. If they want to unload more cap space to create more, they possibly could do that. But I could understand from a fan's perspective why you've lost faith in this front office, because since Troy Weaver has gotten here, If you look at the win column, it has gotten worse each and every year. So I understand from a fan's perspective that you have no faith. I think you shouldn't have any faith until they show you some production in the win column, show you that they can win more than 20 games a year. And I think once they do that, I think you guys can start to have a little bit more faith in this front office. But Tristan, I 100% understand why you have no faith in them. I wouldn't either. Do you have any gut feelings regarding the trade deadline? Uh, I would say for the Pistons, I could see them trading Alec Burks. Um, I think Alec Burks is a name. We just saw it earlier today that the Pelicans are interested in Alec Burks. I think he's the one vet that you could possibly get something for. No, I don't know what it is. I should say, I don't know what the Pistons are looking for from a trade for Alec Burks. I don't know if they're looking for possibly a first round pick. Maybe they want to, get some more second round picks. Maybe they want a young player and picks. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Pistons unloaded on Alec Burks, because that would give a chance for Marcus Sasser to play more minutes, Ryan. Because to me, I think Marcus Sasser needs to at least get 15 minutes a night from here on out. Marcus Sasser needs to play more, in my opinion. It would be really pointless for an organization to trade up to get Marcus Sasser for him just to sit and rot on the bench. I think, to me, Burks is probably going to be moved this deadline. Maybe another piece or two. I'm not entirely sure. But it's a great question. This comes from, we got another question from 7 Mile B. Shout out to 7 Mile B. Should Troy Deceiver? Should Troy Deceiver still have a job? You trust him to fix a team? It sounds like he's going to have a job here. Now, do I trust him to fix a team? I'm willing to give him this season and see what he does at the deadline. If there's no movement at the deadline, 7 Mile, I think you can start having conversations of, we need to get a new general manager. Maybe they demote Troy just to be a scout. Maybe they just, demote him just to still be in the front office, but have him be a talent evaluator. Because I think as a GM, he's made such marginal moves that they're not really needle movers. Like, I think his best offseason was 2020 when he first got here. Trading Luke Kennard, trading, all the contracts away, getting those 3 first-round picks on draft night, doing a sign and trade with Jeremy Grant. I thought that was his best offseason. It was the most active he was. And we really haven't seen him be that active or aggressive since then. It's been really small moves. I mean, if you think about it, the biggest free agent acquisition that we've ever signed was Kelly Olynyk, and that was $13 million, which is like a mid-level right now. It's not a move where I'm like excited about. It's not a move where I'm like, yeah, like, oh, we just got Kelly Olynyk. Like, we're about to make the playoffs. Like, I want to give him at least this deadline before I have an opinion. But if he doesn't do anything at the deadline to try to make this roster somewhat a little bit better, then yeah, you have to have those conversations and saying like, hey, I think it's time for Troy to go. Yeah, I agree, Maurice. You have to do something. You can't do nothing. I think what they're waiting for is the January 15th deadline, where players that had signed contracts this past summer can be traded, which is later this week. It'll be on a Monday, which, yeah, 15th is a Monday. But I don't know, man. To your point, they do have to do something. You can't just keep losing the way you're losing and not make any type of movement. Let's see. I know you guys got a couple questions in here. Rui Hachimura, and I'm assuming Torian Prince would be my move over Woods. Yeah, Rui Hachimura is a nice forward. If you are talking about Torian Prince, hell of a small forward too. Um, I like Christian Wood, but I don't know if the organization would want to bring him back. I had heard that there was a lot of baggage off the court with him, especially missing practice almost each and every day. So I don't know if they want to do that again. I really don't. I think a perfect fit next to Cade would be a two-way off-ball guard that is really good from three. Someone like Kurt Heinrich, Kyle Korver, etc. It doesn't need to be also ready to be on that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the type of two-way guard that they want. Obviously, their two-way guards are pretty hard to find. You could argue that if Jaden Ivey locked into the defensive end, that could possibly be him. Um, Maybe that's Marcus Sasser. I don't really think there's a guard right now in free agency that the Pistons would break the bank to try to get him, but maybe there's one available on the open trade market. But I think shooting guard for me is Jaden Ivey's position to lose. Um, Maybe Sasser has a little bit of shooting guard in him, even though he's a little bit undersized. He can defend and he gets you a bucket when you need it. Since the Warriors have made everyone available, they should go after Dario Saric. He's only making 2 million. Yeah, that's Dario Saric has always been a very, in my opinion, anyway. That anytime I watch him, he just gets buckets at the end of the day. Um, and I really don't know what the Warriors want. They said that they wanted a 7 footer that could play make. Um, Run it back with James Wiseman. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what the Warriors are possibly looking for. It sounds like they're just trying to have a tear down of that roster and just build around stuff. I liked Prince too. He's not moving the needle in LA at all, though. Yeah, but I think he would get more opportunities here. Organic. I think he would get like the touches that Kevin Knox get. You could swap those with Torian Prince, and he would probably be productive. He's kind of like those lower tier, like kind of like the lower tier 3 and D wings that I think the Pistons are looking at right now. They're not looking to make a splash for a small forward, but they are looking for wings that can get them, 10 points a game and, somewhat play defense because right now they're not playing much. Outside of the game last night, they really haven't played any defense. Yeah, I really don't know. I really don't know what type of moves that they're going to make, but it's interesting. I think they'll be active. I just don't think they're going to be as active as fans want. I think fans just want that big splash. They want like the Zach Levines. They want the Pascal Siakams. I'm just not sure. Actually, I do have a hot take for you. I think the Pistons this year, because you want me to rate all my draft prospects on the wing. I think the Pistons this year, once they know what pick they have, they will not keep it. I think they're going to trade the pick this year because I don't think you can get hyped up unless they win the lottery and they just draft whoever. because sounds like it's going to be Alex Sarr. He's the consensus number one overall pick as I'm recording this in January. I think for the Pistons, if they don't win the lottery, they will probably look to trade the pick because I can't really get excited about anyone in this draft class. Not to say it's a bad draft class. I don't think it's a bad draft class. There's not just that quote unquote difference maker, that quote unquote star, like franchise player. I think this is like a B minus draft class right now. I think there are some guys later in the draft that you could get if you want to trade back up into the first round or even early second. But I think this year, the Pistons can technically trade it once they find out where they're drafting. There are protections on it, but it's top 18 protected. They still can trade it. They can trade it on draft night if they want. But I just don't know who they're going to trade it for. You're going to have to. I know James had mentioned this last week, and it was like, would you trade? Let's say the Pistons get like the fourth pick. Would you trade the fourth pick for like a Jeremy Grant or the fourth pick for like a Lauri Markkanen? You know, those are the type of conversations that you would have to have as fans. I just don't think the Pistons can add another young guy on this roster and try to preach development, try to preach restoration, because now you would go into year 5 of a rebuild with no playoff experience, no improvement in the win column. I think they need difference makers. They need more vets. They need guys like Houston has right now. Like they need Fred VanVleets. They need Dylan Brooks. They need vets on their team that can help them win and coach them on the court. So I would like to rank them, but I just don't think we're going to keep the pick. I think they're going to just trade it. I really do. Bojan, Duran, and Sasser, first round pick for Murray, Capella, Jalen Johnson. Man, that would be something. That would be a great trade. I don't know if that's possible though. Follow-up question. Are you going to prepare next year's draft, which has a bonnet full of talents? You know, I'll still follow up with this year's draft because you never know. You never know what could happen. I still do follow the draft. I'm going to try to get some draft guys on this podcast for you guys. I'm going to try to reach out to Hoop Intellect because I do want to get his thoughts on just the Detroit Pistons, the draft this year, and what to expect. That's a guy that I do want to talk to and get on the podcast for you guys because I feel like he's just such a big voice in the YouTube community, especially the NBA draft community. So I'm going to try to get him on over the next couple of months and see what he thinks of the draft and the Detroit Pistons. But that's a guy that I'm going to get on this podcast for sure. Ooh, good question, Red Baron. Could we shock the world and get Zion? You know what? So that's another player to keep an eye on. It's like everything you read about the Pelicans with Zion. I think he failed the part of his contract where if he wasn't a certain weight, he would get more money in his contract. He failed that, obviously, and they keep telling him to get in better shape. And let's say you get like the 3rd overall pick. Do you trade the 3rd overall pick and some stuff to get Zion? Like, is that something you do if you're Detroit? I don't know. That's kind of to me, he would be a needle mover type of player. But with him, you have to worry about the health, have to worry about the injury history. But when he's healthy, he's a monster. He's one of the best players in the NBA. To me, I would like if you're an NBA team, especially the Pistons, you should monitor if New Orleans wants to move off from Zion because when he's healthy, he's just a dominant force down there. And I think him and Cade in the pick and roll would be deadly. You can even put the ball in Zion's hands because he's a playmaker. It'll be interesting to see what New Orleans does. It really is. Yeah, Zion just had a 30 ball last night. Exactly. Like when he's healthy, man, he's just a force out there. He really is. March Madness is going to play a big role in this year's draft. Yeah, it seems like it always does. A lot of players during March Madness, their stock goes up like crazy. We're gonna have to wait and see, but I can't wait for March Madness. It's like my favorite time of the year. Yeah, I mean, just test the waters. You never know. You never know where New Orleans is at with Zion. Now, obviously, they haven't won a championship with them, but they have a pretty good roster around them. I mean, you got Brandon Ingram, who I've always liked. They traded for CJ McCollum. Obviously, he had his injuries. I forget what he had. I think it was like another collapsed lung, which sucks for him. But yeah, man, I don't think it doesn't hurt to like call at least. Like I said, would you offer three? Like if the Pistons got the third or fourth overall pick to New Orleans in this year's draft, like would that be a type of move that the Pelicans would make? I think they would consider it. I mean, I would consider it. Like that's the type of player that I think the Pistons would love to have. Oh, mega hustle. Man, you're funny. You're probably right. Wingstop and Coney Island. Oh man. Actually had some Wingstop not too long ago, and it was pretty damn bad. I think it was just my order. It's just their barbecue sauce is trash, man. It's just not good. You are gonna get wings, you gotta go to Detroit Wing Company, or at least B-Dubs. Those are my two favorites. Zayed would cost the Pistons 3 unprotected first, and Ivy and a star man. It wouldn't cost that much to get Zion. Would not cost the Pistons 3 unprotected first and 2 lottery picks. I don't think so. No way. No way. That Wingstop comment has me dead. My God. Shut him down. Oh man. No, but if you guys don't have any more questions, I'm gonna wrap this podcast up. I'm gonna try to get a guest for next week for you guys. Had a guest lined up this past week, but he had to cancel because his in-laws were coming to town. And like, hey, family happens, I get it, but appreciate you guys, watching the podcast today. Really do. Still got 114 of you guys in here. Really do. But I will see you guys next Saturday. Oh, actually, not next Saturday. Probably next Sunday. I actually have to do a hoop classic on Saturday. I'll see you guys next Sunday for the podcast. Hope you guys are staying safe, and go Lions.